Welcome everyone. I am so excited for you to be here. My name is Marcela Ozan, Origination Production Associate here at Vaster, and we've got so many exciting episodes coming out explaining about the financing world and specifically here in the Vasterverse. Today, we are going to be talking with a very special individual who, in just quarter one, has closed 45 million in loan amount, and quarter two is looking even brighter. In his career, he has closed north of 310 million in loan amount. Mr. George Fraguio, how are you today?
Hi, how you doing? Thank you, Marcela, for that great introduction. I don't think you're as good as your numbers, right? Speak. I think there's a lot more depth to who you are as a professional, as an individual, and hopefully this gives me a platform and the ability to communicate what we do at Vaster, what we focus on, and what is really our core beliefs that makes us such a strong competitor in the marketplace.
Absolutely. And on that note, I do want to congratulate you on 10 years at Vaster. Your leadership and discipline really shines bright through everyone and the existence and growth of this firm. So thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been 10 years, a lot of growth, a lot of struggle, a lot of challenges. But I think that every time, every year, we get better and better. And innovation is one thing that I'm very proud of at Vaster as well. And we have a great culture, we have a great team. And, this for me has been 10 years of my life that I definitely don't regret a single second.
Wonderful. Let's talk about Vaster, right? What our lending parameters are, who we are, a little bit about that.
Sure. Vaster is a fully integrated mortgage platform that started mostly as a bridge lender, as a private bridge lender focused in South Florida on high value assets, right? On luxury assets. It's progressed and it's become fully integrated. We have now a mortgage brokerage platform that also has the ability to execute outside of private lending, but our core continues to be private lending and private lending at a very high value amount. And I think we've been leaders in that marketplace in reference to not only the sizes of the deals, but the availability of execution and working with complexity on a lot of these transactions. And hopefully we could talk a little bit about those things today.
Absolutely. So we are going to speak up on a very specific loan product, but on that note, I would like to expand that at Vaster. We have several loan products and we tailor it specifically to the sponsor's scenario, right? And when we say sponsor, we're talking about the developer.
The developer, an investor that's looking to get into real estate from different perspectives, but mostly from the perspective of owning real estate for rent, for income, or developing real estate for future sales.
Amazing. So let's dive right in. So let's talk about the spec build cycle. Give us a high level view on what it is, where the demand is coming from, and why it's important in South Florida market.
Well, we're seeing it right now. I mean, just yesterday we had Mayor Mandami, who's our number one salesperson for Miami, say that he's going to impose a tax in New York on luxury assets. And it just makes a lot more sense for people in those states that are high-end, high net worth individuals to come and make that migration to Florida, specifically South Florida. So we've seen big players come in and make massive purchases in this market. So what's going on right now? Well, what's going on is that there is a lack of inventory for these kind of individuals. They're accustomed to a certain level of execution and finishes on these spec homes, and they need luxury at that biggest level, and we're trying to catch up as a market. We have beautiful properties, we have beautiful lots that are waterfront, we have incredible weather, we have incredible climate, culture. We've really raised the bar in Miami. But now, with these new buyers coming into the market
Who want a home now?
that need to, find something that really fits their family, spec homes is the key, and we're seeing a lot of developers coming into this market to take advantage of that opportunity. One, group is from Europe. There's some French. I have a developer now from Belgium that's looking to develop a house. So we're seeing that group, and then traditionally we have Latin American groups coming in as well to do the same thing. So what is the spec home cycle? Well, there's the identification of a lot that can provide a platform for a beautiful spec home. In Miami, we have waterfront lots that make it very exciting. So the acquisition of a lot would be the first, phase of the spec home cycle. And we do financing for lots and acquisition. That's how we really actually started at Vassar, was really focusing more on land acquisition and financing those purchases. Then we started to gradually grow into repositioning. That means you already own the land, you paid for it cash, you prepped it, you pre-developed it, you got the entitlements, you got the zoning, and now you want to ramp it up and you need to start. You need to kickstart your process. So a lot of times those sponsors come to us and look to take out cash to kickstart their construction project. And then there's the ground up construction. That means you're ready, shovel ready, ready to go, and you're ready to execute on the construction. We come in now, and we've been doing it now for over a year on the ground up construction. And we really focus on ground up construction that's at another level in reference to loan amounts and into complexity and execution. So I think that's our secret sauce in the marketplace. And then there is the takeout. And like I told you, everybody wants takeout, right? The takeout is the low-hanging fruit of the phase, which means the house has already achieved the CO, it's complete, and now you're able to give them, that sponsor, 12 to 18 months time to market, to really properly market the property. You got to think, you've finished the house, but you might need still some cosmetic features to address with the house. You need to stage it, you need to furnish it to get these top tier clients, right? So that takeout is where the house is complete, there's less risk, right. It's easier. So that's the phases of the spec cycle.
Understood. So you beautifully touched on phase one, acquisition financing, but tell me about some common challenges here. What soft costs, hard costs do we consider when we're going into the next stage of the spec build cycle?
Yeah, that's an insightful question, because a lot of developers, when they come into the market, they don't realize, they're coming from Europe or they're coming from Latin America. They were accustomed to ways of how they went to a bank or they went to a lender and proposed what they wanted to do, and they were including certain costs in their soft costs that they wanted to get financed. And here in the US, specifically in South Florida, there is a little bit of, more arbitrary decisions made on what can be used or what shouldn't be included. So you got to be careful with that, and that's why I suggest all the sponsors to have a call with my team. My team gets on a call, we go over the budget, we go over the details, and we make sure that we're aligned. At the beginning, it's very important to really analyze the budget and see what kind of costs they incurred during the soft cost process and see if we could cover some of that.
Okay. And let's say, I'm going to throw out a scenario here, and let's say I've bought land, right? And I have purpose on it to eventually build on it, but I've held it for a couple years.
Well, that's that's called, getting equity, built up equity within the lot. And some people can do it successfully because they take the right amount of time and they transform an area. There's a market that might be emerging and they saw it and identified it 3 to 5 years ago, and now they're actually ready to execute. And then there's people that are just riding the wave that bought it like 12 months ago and now want to be able to get a build up in the equity. So we got to be careful about that. We got to make sure that there has been money invested, that the comps, right, that the market itself can support it. A lot of times you might be a little bit optimistic in reference to what the value of your lot is. So at the end of the day, Vaster will do an internal analysis of valuation, and then we'll also, if we're engaged, we'll also do an appraisal to get that noted. But yes, we got to be careful with that increase. Sometimes, you bought the lot, let's say $1 million, and now a year goes by and you're saying, my lot's worth $3 million. So that's 3 times, right? So you got to be careful with those kind of concepts.
Beautiful. And so jumping into phase 2, the land improvement pre-construction, what's a scenario that you can tie into this phase?
Well, this is a great phase for a lot of developers that think, okay, I need to buy this lot and I'm competing against other potential developers. And I'm seeing that a lot more in this market. There's a lot more developers that are, really looking for that waterfront lot. They're vying for it, and they say the best way to close it would be cash, right? And cash and quickly. So they've owned it now, they bought it cash, it's ready to go. Let's say this land is already entitled, ready to go, it has everything to move on quickly. They'll rather go and pay cash and not go through a loan process so that they could control it and then they could get straight into ground up construction. What we're seeing there is that they might have kind of like a 12-month buildup to get to ground up. And at that point, they need some cash, right? So they recapture their equity that they placed in the purchase and they use that equity and parlay it into, developing the soft costs, right? Architectural plans, legal. With Vaster, we're very keen on helping developers start their project, and hopefully by doing that kind of engagement, we can transition into the ground up construction.
Right.
We see it kind of like the door to get into the ground up construction. We gave them the proceeds, and we've had several cases like that where we gave them proceeds. They acquired the land. We had a developer that needed to do a seawall. He needed to complete the seawall before he could execute, and we were able to give him cash out to then start the construction process.
Wonderfully said, George. Thank you so much. On phase number 3, we're going into my personal favorite, the construction financing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, some challenges for investors coming into this next phase.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, do they have the money? And a lot of times when the developer comes into the market, the sponsor comes into the market, they already know, they've done some projects, they have to have some experience. They know that there is a equity requirement. And I think in most cases is determining what that equity requirement is, specifically in a market that is very much challenged with change orders, right? And what you're seeing during that period is that you might need to acquire materials from overseas that have very expensive costs. Right. And now with tariffs, might even be more expensive. So there's kind of like a timeline there on those soft costs. So you need to make sure that you have the ability to stroke a check if there's a change order. You can't expect the lender to be the one that provides the money to bridge that gap. We could give you construction financing. It's going to be available. And how we bracket our construction loans is we do 55% of completed value or up to 70% loan to cost. Obviously, those numbers change depending on the sponsor, right, the project, where it's located, what we see in their plans and their projects. But that's kind of the way that we bracket. And then what we do is the lesser of those numbers is the binding number that we use in order to execute a construction loan. And in construction, it's a structured finance. When we're cashing you out on land, right? Or when we're giving you the acquisition on land, now you have this money that you can use basically at your own discretion to get your project going. And there's, we obviously monitor what they're doing. We go to the site, we check it during that phase. But in ground up, we make sure that we inspect the property before we do any draws. We get together with the developer and his team and his GC, and we make sure that we create a draw schedule that is aligned not only for our side, but for their side, so that we keep the project going and moving. At that point, it's a partnership that needs to work together seamlessly. And I think we do a very good job with that.
Right. You're also doing great at this interview. You jumped to my next exciting question. I was going to ask about draws, but thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, so now we're jumping into phase 4, the takeout, the exit strategy.
Everybody's happy about takeout, right? Takeout is the exciting time. It's kind of like Christmas time, right? For the lender and for the developer as well, where the gifts are about to arrive. Santa's going to drop the gifts off. And, what do you see? You see already you have a certificate of occupancy that makes the property now less risky, right? While you're doing the construction loan, you're maybe 60% complete. And, what do you have in reference to an asset, right?
Right.
Where's the liquidity of that asset? It becomes more complicated. Who could take it over? So in the takeout, it's easy. The property's complete. It's ready to be sold. But here's what happens. Sometimes you get to the CO, but the house still looks like it's just been recently constructed, right? It still is missing the details. At Vaster, when we do a takeout, we also take into account the ability to upsize the loan to give you a little bit of money to actually set up the house the right way for marketing.
Right.
a lot of these high-end homes have high-end teams selling them. And we've noticed in the marketplace that these real estate thought leaders come in and start to dictate what's going on with what features you need to do, what kind of look do you have to have. And sometimes the developer's just making sure that he could get the house to the CO. But at that point is when they start thinking of like, okay, how do we sell this property?
Right.
What is the exit? We have now people coming in and chiming in on what should be done.
And do you think that's healthy?
It depends. I mean, in some cases, what is the strategy of a spec home developer is to maximize his exit, right? So if you're using teams that are professional teams that have a track record of selling these kind of homes, you definitely listen to them. Okay. Obviously, they are experts in the market and they know what sells. So you listen to them. But does it put pressure sometimes? If you weren't thinking, like we said before, if you didn't have those change orders in mind and that kind of thing, that can affect, right, the outcome. But the takeout is great because you could give the home now the look, you could set it up, kind of like prepare it for a successful exit.
To put a little twist on this, I am aware you had a very interesting midstream construction happening, apart from the spec build cycle. So tell us a little bit about the challenges on that, how you got it to the closing table. That was exceptional work, George.
Midstream is not something that a lot of lenders like to hear, right? You come, you get a call from a broker that says, hey, I have a project 60% complete. What is the first question? It's like, what happened, right? What did it go wrong? Was it an over or an underestimation in the budget? Was the developer not, when the inspections came for the draws, was he ready or not? At the end of the day, midstream is a very complicated situation, but sometimes you get lucky and you find a situation that makes sense. And in our case, we had a sponsor that was bank funded on an acquisition loan and had significant equity in the lot. And that made the deal for us to go into ground up with them a lot easier. So in this market, you have to make sure that there's skin in the game from the developer, but you also have to make sure that you can help them execute in midstream if there's equity, if you have a strong sponsor with good liquidity that could stroke a check if there's a change order. And then, in this specific case, he couldn't stay at the bank because he had a personal situation. He was going through a separation and divorce that obviously impacted his situation. So that's another thing. People come to bridge lenders because we have extraordinary solutions for them. This was out of the ordinary, a situation that came to us that could have probably gone to a bank to complete, but in his situation, he couldn't execute. And it was a lot of heavy lifting, but we got it done.
We got it done, that's right. We talked a little bit about the spec build cycle, and we put a little bit of fun in there. Now I'd like to ask you 2 very rapid fire questions. Is that all right with you?
Shoot.
All right. So what is the benefit of working with Vaster?
Culture. It's who we are as a team. Where, our focus always from the beginning was, integrity, transparency, and pride in execution, and making sure that people would come back. In the market, you say, oh, you're a hard money lender, right? And that's not who we are, right? We're lend to earn. We're not a lend to own shop. We want to make sure that we have repeat clients and repeat brokers and referrals. So we want to execute. And that's really what defines Vaster.
In what year or when this change happened, when you became from a hard money lender to a bridge lender? Because there is a huge difference.
I think that we were always from the beginning when we thought, and our background, our ownership, our executive committee, they're all about, relationships and continuing relationships. So lend to own and hard money and not doing background checks or that kind of stuff, that was never in our mind. We wanted to do this the right way. And I think that we did it. We did it the right way. And it shows because we get repeat clients.
Exactly.
We get people that come back and say, hey, let's call George or let's call anyone at Vaster because they're professionals. They execute. They tell you what it is. They don't lie. They don't change the quote at the closing table. we're straight shooters, and I think that the market respects us for that. We've done a good job with that. I think our goodwill has definitely been
Absolutely,
established.
and we really provide grace and knowledge to all of our clients. And maybe we'll pass on the deal because your capital stack isn't in order for you to really complete the project successfully, and it's not our goal to end up with the asset. We want you to sell it, make your money, and come on right back, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like every no leads to a yes,
Exactly.
and more times you see us saying no, and it's not a bad thing. I think that when we first started, it was obviously for me like, I want to close
Right, it's
loans,
tough,
right?
yeah.
I want to do deals. I mean, I'm a salesperson. That's what I do, and that's what I do for a living. But you realize over 10 years that all those no's were very good no's,
Right.
and they saved the company. They kept us in a good position, and then the yeses that came were great yeses,
Right.
right? So you're gonna see 10 no's before you get one yes. That's been my number,
Right.
10-1.
Right. What is the biggest mistake that you see sponsors make in the entire spec build cycle?
Trying to make money without having an idea of what the equity requirement is. I think that there's some very optimistic kind of outlook in reference to what the lender could provide. You know, the question that I was asking my kids since they were small and they grew up in real estate, around real estate, was what's more expensive, debt or equity? And the key is people think, oh, it's debt, whatever. It's, you know, especially debt at private. No, it's equity, right? It's taking a piece of your puzzle. It's taking a
Right,
piece of
right.
your pie, right? And trying to make more return. So equity is the key, right? And when I see sponsors coming into the market that haven't done their homework and think that they could get max debt, right? So because
Right.
they don't want to ask for another equity, investment,
Right.
you need to make sure that that's balanced. And we're very good at determining that.
Of course, I think our parameters again allow us to say this is how far we can go and this is how far you need to be in for this to be worthwhile for you at the closing table. And it also aligns with the trust that we want with our clients, you know? So thank you, George. You know, it has been absolutely a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you.
And I know there's so much more to come here in Vaster. You guys are always welcome to the Vaster offices. Thank you so much for tuning along. My name is Marcela Ozan. I'm here with George Fraguio. We just talked about the spec build cycle here at Vaster. Any comments, questions, or concerns, please head over to our website, vaster.com, or email us directly at hello@vaster. We've got a wonderful LinkedIn page and an Instagram, Vaster Mortgage, where you can stay connected with us on our day-to-day with events coming near you, recently closed deals, and articles on sharing our thoughts. Thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one.